I just want to go over some basics on cabinet hardware. Cabinet hardware that you're trying to put on for your handles, knobs, whatever you choose, there's an enormous amount of hardware out there. So every single thing is kind of different when it comes to placement. When you're going to place cabinet hardware, you will have some people that are adamant that you take kind of this square right here, and if you're putting a knob, it's right here. You will have it where somebody might tell you if you're putting bars on like this, that they want the bottom of the bar to be at the same level point as the frame of this door. One thing I think that everyone would agree on is if you're mounting into this where you have a shaker style door, okay? So a shaker style door essentially just means you have a picture frame type door, okay? And if you have that, this one happens to have a 2 1/4 inch frame. You can have frames that are smaller. You can have frames that are 3 inches, okay? This hardware should be going through that frame. It should not be installed in this 1/4 inch panel that you have in here, okay? So this 1/4 inch panel is not ideal. You want it through the 3/4 meat of what you have right here. So you want to make sure that your handle is in there. You want to make sure that you set up, you can buy all sorts of cabinet hardware jigs that are on the market. They're fancy jigs. They show you how to set all this type of stuff up. You can make your own. You can go through and individually mark every single hole that you need to drill and hope that you're spot on enough to be able to drill those things. If you choose to make a jig yourself out of, say, wood, and you make yourself a block on here, and maybe that block has a catch here and here where you can put it up here almost like an L shape, and you just drill in so you know you can pop these in all the way down. Make sure that you're either checking those holes with a handle every so often to make sure that the drill bit is not making those holes bigger, or you drill those holes bigger, put in a brass insert of some point so that when you're drilling through there, it's not expanding out those holes, because you'll get a lot of those inserts on those fancier jigs that you can buy. Everybody's heard of Kreg jigs, K-R-E-G. They make all sorts of jigs for that. There's other companies that make them. Bloom, B-L-U-M, makes jigs for doing these types of things. But either way, you want to make sure that the way that you set up your handle, right, is usually center of this, right, and it's in that meat, and then however you choose to have it placed. Some people want to place them all the way up here. When you come to a drawer, okay, now this is a little bit different, right? So we don't use the same philosophy necessarily as our door. Here is a drawer. Again, it's got that shaker style look. You have a center panel here, but we have something else that we don't have up here. Up here, we have a 3/4 door. Down here, we have a 3/4 door, and then we have a 5/8 hardwood drawer box right here. So you have a couple of choices. You can take it right through here, right, where it goes through the 3/4 here and the 5/8, and you have it mounted in. You can choose to put it up here, but you're going to get a problem with your cabinet overhang, and it's going to be right there, and you may not like that look. You can choose to put it in the center panel here, because we no longer just have this 1/4 inch panel. We also have 5/8 behind here, so we have 3/4. When you buy hardware, they give you the option. So you can see on this right here, this bolt going through there has these notches in it. Okay, and the reason it has those notches is you can cut it at those spaces. Those are breakaways so that you can adjust this for the thickness of what you need. So if I'm going through the 5/8, through the 3/4, all the way into this, I'm pretty much going to leave this at that length. If I choose to go through here in just a 3/4, I'm going to be breaking this down probably 1, 2, 3 segments before I get in here, because this only allows me to screw so far into it, okay? If I'm choosing to go through the center here, which is 1/4 inch, 5/8. Okay, again, I'm going to be breaking part of this away. So it's really nice when the manufacturer of the hardware gives you these breakaway screws. If you're putting stuff in and you don't need these breakaways, because it also does come with just regular size screws that are typically for your 3/4 over here, keep these breakaways. They will come in handy down the road when you're doing some other hardware, and they do not provide them or you lose screws or something like that. Also, to keep in mind, and this is very important, right? Don't just assume that this distance from here to here is 4 inches, for example. Like if I go and I put a tape on this and I measure in between, okay, we are not at 4 inches center to center. We're more about 3 3/4. So typically hardware like this would come at a fixed measurement. Might be 3 inches, might be 4 inches to center, okay? But by offsetting it just a little bit, it makes all of the hardware proprietary, which means that you need to buy this to replace this. You can't go and just buy now a 4-inch handle when you had a 3 3/4 in there. So it's a good way for people to make sure that you keep buying their product. So keep that in mind when you're setting up whatever jig you have, and don't just automatically assume, okay, these are 4-inch on center, these are 3-inch pulls, things of that nature, okay? And then don't forget too, in a setup like this, some people change it up. You may have knobs up here, you may have handles here, you may have handles up here, and on your drawers you may have knobs. Everything can change. You could have knobs, you could have cups, you could have all sorts of hardware. There is so much cabinet hardware out there that pretty much every single time you go to do a cabinet now, unless you're doing mass production, if you're doing it as one-offs for building customers, whatever you're doing, it's probably going to be very specific to that job, and you're going to have to lay out the hardware. Either you do it or you have, you know, whoever's in charge of the overall project or the end user lay out the hardware with you, and you make sure that you understand all the measurements and the way it needs to be, as this hardware can change.